43.5 years.
I don't think there's any half. 43 straight, right?
Get out of here, man. Here,
We're going to talk about Robert Howes. Robert Howes has a viral video going around about him when he was actually sentenced to 43 years for a robbery that he committed. A lot of people feel like 43 years was an extensive charge for robbery, and he really acted out in court. He showed out. When the judge read the sentence, he stood up and he called her all type of names. His family called her names, and he had to be escorted by the police out of the courtroom. This happened actually in 2019, but every time this year the video goes viral again, and it has two opposing audiences. You have one side that feels like he got what he deserved, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. And then you have another audience that feels like he got a harsh sentence. I'm here to just give you an unbiased perspective, although I am a little bit biased because I was a previous inmate myself, but I try to keep it unbiased for you guys to just learn and grow and see what we could do different in the judicial system. This page is strictly for prison reform. Like, follow, subscribe if you are interested in what is going on behind those gates and what we could do to make things better. Robert Howes, born June 24th, 1994, experienced a lot of trauma himself. He was a witness to his 16-year-old uncle actually hanging himself, and he witnessed that at 4 years old. His life had a traumatic start, to say the least. And he went on to have an extensive juvenile record, according to some articles. And I would say he became a career criminal. After his juvenile record, he actually went on to commit a burglary that led him serving a 5-year prison sentence in the state of Ohio. And while he was in prison, it said that he actually is alleged member of a gang called Heartless Felons. And there was one incident where he actually threw feces at an officer while he was incarcerated. And the crime that he was actually incarcerated for was that he robbed two 15-year-old boys. He definitely has a background. Now I want to go on to talk about what led to the scene that played out today. Because he had served his time, he did 5 years, and he got out May of 2018. May 2018, and he was actually released on an ankle monitor. He actually went on to commit a couple of crimes, and he went on like a crime spree, I would say. Around 12 a.m. on September 13th, 2018, a 70-year-old woman walked into her bedroom and saw shoes sticking out from underneath her bed. When she saw the shoes, a man apparently jumped out and pointed a gun at her. She screamed and she ran into the bathroom and locked the door and was able to call the police. Thank goodness that she was not hurt during this crime. That was on September 13th, 2018. Not even 24 hours later, 8:30 p.m. on September 14th, 2018, a male victim went into his barn after eating dinner with his family because he noticed that the light was on. The barn is 20 yards from the house. Now, when he goes into the barn, a man pops out from behind the bar. When they say bar, I was reading his appeal docket. I'm not sure if they mean like a liquor bar or what type of bar. He threatens to shoot the victim and asks where the money is. In the process of him threatening to shoot the victim and asking where the money is, the defendant House noticed that there was a safe in the barn. And when he noticed the safe, he pointed a gun at the victim's head and made him open the safe. Once the safe was open, he made the victim lie on the ground. This is when the victim noticed that the suspect was wearing an ankle monitor. While he's rummaging through the safe, the suspect found a leather bag. And when he found the leather bag, he began to fill it with things like a handgun, alcohol, headphones, a camera, and equipment for the camera. Once done, the suspect asked the victim where was the money? Because the safe was not containing any type of cash. The victim stated that the money was in the house. The victim actually had his family in the house. They spent approximately 30 minutes in the barn, and then he walked the victim to the house. When he walked the victim to the house, the victim told him, "You're not getting in my house. My wife and 2 small children are in that house." Once that happened, the victim cracked the door open and tell his wife to give him all the money. In the process of the wife giving him the money, she noticed that he was being robbed. She was able to call the police, and at some point, the victim was able to get in the house, slam the door shut, and grab a gun. I definitely believe in stopping criminals, and I definitely believe in paying for your crimes, but I also just want to take into account that he just does not seem like a violent criminal. Nobody was physically harmed. It's still a horrible, horrible thing to do. My crime is actually robbery with a firearm. I feel extremely remorseful for my crime. I did not have a part in the crime besides knocking on a door, but it led to a home invasion when I knocked on the door. And other individuals robbed the place, and then I was actually charged with the robbery. I say that to say this: I have been reformed. I have been rehabilitated, so that I know that it's possible for people to be rehabilitated. Some people are violent by nature, and it's going to take a lot more for them to change. And then you have other individuals that are just caught up in a mindset that has been embedded in them from a very early stage. The second victim is actually NFL player Joe Jaravicius. Joe is a Cleveland native, and he had just returned back to Cleveland to play for the Browns. He was formerly at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He went with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to the Super Bowl in 2003. Joe is the reason that this case got no coverage at the time, because he's an NFL player. When he spoke out in court, he says that he had trauma himself. He actually had someone die in his arms in a freak accident. The man was apparently like crushed by concrete and died in Joe Jaravicius' arms. Not only that, in 2002, he had his son, who was born prematurely, was fighting for his life in the hospital, and he still went on to go play in a championship game, NFC championship game against the Oakland Raiders, and he caught 4 passes, which equaled 78 yards, and Tampa Bay went on to win 48-21. His child ended up passing away, unfortunately. I feel when he spoke in court and he offered his perspective of his trauma and how he used trauma to like push through, really makes it harder for the defense, because they're using the background of trauma in the case of Robert House. They're saying that he had trauma in his childhood, and then Joe Jaravicius is saying, "Hey, I've experienced trauma too, and I'm not out robbing people." Joe actually asked for the maximum sentence in court.
Clearly, he didn't learn his lesson and was not rehabilitated, and I'm requesting that he receive the maximum sentence allowed by law. Unfortunately, my grandmother told me a long time ago, if you have nothing nice to say about somebody, don't say it. In your honor, at this point, I have nothing good to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Robert House, he has family in court at this time, and you can see his family in the beginning of the video, court having their outbursts as well. One of his family members is Stephanie House, a member of Ohio House of Democrats. So she has with the state. She wrote a letter to the judge, and she's the one that brought up his past trauma and spoke on Robert House's behalf.
Something that is near and dear for Representative Stephanie House.
My younger cousin, Robert, he got sentenced to 43 years in prison for an aggravated robbery. And they was like, she just threw him away. They said that he wasn't redeemable.
And she actually caught a lot of flack for that, because a lot of people feel like she should not be standing behind him because he was a career criminal. that does not mean that person can't change. Just because you villainize that person or that person villainize themselves because of their conduct, it does not mean that they're not able to actually change their behavior. Sticking up for her cousin and speaking on his behalf, that's the kind of love that will change people. I have this kind of love for my family when I went through what I went through and going to prison. My family stuck by me. They believed in me. Even when I didn't see it in myself, they believed in me. And that love, that unconditional love that they have for me and that support that they have for me, it's what fueled the change in my life. If they're fighting for me, it just gives me more fuel to fight for myself. So Stephanie House, I really don't feel like she should get any flack for standing up for her cousin, because if she doesn't do it, who will? And Stephanie House stood up for her cousin in court and she spoke on his behalf, but apparently it wasn't enough. Judge Nancy McDonald, who actually is known for handing out harsh sentences, she was quoted saying, "I'm all about second chances, but clearly his, as in Robert House's, has come and gone. He did not learn his lesson and he was not rehabilitated. I'm requesting he receive maximum sentence allowed by law." That's what his judge said in court. She went on to read his sentences, which was 43 years. And how she was able to do that was on his different counts of robbery. He got 11 years for one, 11 years for another one. Because remember, it's multiple robberies. And instead of her running his charges concurrent, which means that your charges run together, then whatever the highest sentence is, that's the sentence that he would actually do. Instead of doing that, she ran it consecutive. Consecutive means that once you do this 11 years for this charge, then your time is going to start again and you're going to have to do another 11 years for this charge. Once that 11 years ends, then you're going to have to do another 11 years for this charge. That's what people are, I believe, referring to when they say he got a harsh sentence. He did try to appeal this case and it was denied to the family of Robert. Just continue to try for his paperwork and encourage him to better himself while he's in there. I know the system is not set up to rehabilitate, but he can rehabilitate himself with the help of God and with the support system that he has. Having a cousin who's on this, now she's on the city council, to have her in his corner, I mean, honestly, he really does have a great support system. I just hope that he uses this opportunity to better himself and to be an example of what could happen if an individual put their mind to it, that they can change. The victims, the elderly lady that was robbed, the NFL player that was robbed, I think is extremely unfortunate. And I'm happy that you did get some kind of consolation in court. And I just pray that you're able to move forward from this. Pray that your family just really is able to get through this and come out better for it. I'm just sorry for both sides. It's just very unfortunate. Now, this video always goes viral around this time of year because he was sentenced and he acted out in court the way he did. When you get sentenced it to that much time, it feels like a death sentence. It feels like a funeral. It doesn't feel like a sentencing to prison. The anger that exploded in the courtroom, a lot of it was directed to the judge. The anger should first go internal, and then you can actually be able to give that anger to God and he can actually start to change you and transform you. You did something horrible. You actually went to prison. You actually got out. You had an opportunity. You were on an ankle monitor, and then you went on to commit these robberies. You have no right to take something from someone else. It's definitely wrong. Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe.